in this project, we're going to create this, we're going to have this image here, and you can see it says double click on the image to heart it, and it says you liked it 0 times. So when we click anywhere on this image, if I double click, you're going to see a heart pop up. It's going to have a little CSS grow animation, and it's going to show wherever we click. Not only that, it's going to show how many times we clicked. You can see you clicked 4 times. So the HTML and CSS for this is really, really easy. When we get into the JavaScript, we're going to set a double click event and basically insert a heart in the exact position where we click. So we're going to be working with, you know, on the event parameter we have, or the event object, we have the client X and client Y values, the event target offset left, offset top, so we can tell exactly where this element comes in from the top and the left, because we need to calculate that in order to find the exact position in the image. And another thing we'll do is, instead of just using DBL click, the double click event, we're going to use just a single click event and basically create our own double click event based on the time spaced between clicks. So if I just click once and then I wait, you know, a decent amount of time, again, that's not going to be a double click. So we're going to test the time between clicks and basically create our own double click event. All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to get started on our double click heart project, and we are going to be using Font Awesome. So notice that I have the link, the CDN to Font Awesome here, so you can get that from the Font Awesome website or cdnjs.com. So let's change the title here in the HTML, and we'll call this double click heart. And down here we want to have not much. We're going to have an H3 here, and we'll say double click on the image to, and then let's put the heart here. So we're going to use an I tag with the class of FAS and FA-heart. And then after that, we're just going to put the word it, so outside of the icon here. So it'll be double click on the image to heart it. Okay, there we go. And then we're also going to count how many times it's been clicked. So that's going to go into a small tag here, and we'll say you liked it, and then a span here, and let's give this an ID of times, and just start with 0, and then after the span here we'll just say times. So that'll tell us how many times we liked it. And then the last thing we want is just a div with the class of love me, and that's basically where the background image is going to go, and where, you know, we're gonna add our event listener to click or double click on it and get that heart icon. All right, so let's save that. Let's jump into the style sheet here. And we're going to use a font family called Oswald. So I'm just going to do CSS family equals Oswald. And for the background here, not the background, for the font family here in the body, let's change that to Oswald. Okay, so that'll change the font. And then we don't really need Flexbox here, so I'm actually going to get rid of all this stuff. Yeah, we'll get rid of that. And all I'm going to put here is a text align center. And then let's start to style like the H3. So let's give a margin bottom here of 0. And let's add text align center here. Okay, and then the small tag I want to display as block, because small is inline by default. And then I want to add margin bottom to that of 20 pixels, and also text align center. So for the heart, we obviously don't want a black heart, and we're going to have the heart icon in the image when we click on it. So let's style FA-heart, and let's just make the color to red like that. And now we have a red heart. So next we want to do the love me class, which is going to be basically the whole image. So for this, let's do a height of 440, and let's do a width of 300. And then for the background, so I'm going to say background image. Actually, we'll use background. And then it's going to be a URL. And of course, this could be any image you want. I'm just going to grab this real quick. It's just an image of a car from Unsplash. Okay, so we'll paste that in there. All right, now I just want to add a couple background attributes like no repeat, position, center, center, and cover. Okay, and then after that, let's just set margin. Oops, I want to go, yeah, that's right. So margin, I'm going to set that to auto. That'll move it to the middle. And then let's put a cursor pointer, because when we hover over it, we want to have a pointer. And I'm just going to set a max width of 100%. And I'm going to position this to be relative, because the heart, when we click and we have the heart icon, that's going to be positioned absolute within this. So the container needs to be positioned relative. And then let's also add a little bit of box shadow, which I'm just going to paste in. Okay, so we have a little box shadow, kind of looks like it's coming off the page. And that should do it for Love Me. So now let's do the heart that's in the Love Me class. So FA-heart. And like I said, we want to position this to be absolute. And we're not going to see this just yet because it's going to get put in through the JavaScript. So we're just adding the CSS, which isn't much. We want to position it absolute, and then we want to have an animation for it, which I'm going to call grow. And we'll do that over a period of 0.6 seconds and make that linear. And then let's add a transform. And for the transform, let's set translate. So it's going to start in the middle, so negative 50% on the x-axis, negative 50% on the y-axis. I also want to scale it. So in addition to translate, we'll have scale to 0. Now for the animation, that's going to go in a keyframe. So let's say at keyframes, and we called it grow. And what I want to do is just change the scaling. Okay, so when we double click on it, it's going to look like it's growing, you know, from its regular size up. So we want to change this. The translate will be, oh, actually, I'm sorry, we need to add, let's just say 2, because it's only at 1 point. So 2, and then we want to scale it up 10. Okay, so it's going to go from 0 to 10. And let's also make the opacity to 0, because we don't want it to stay. Once we double click, we just want it to show, scale, and then disappear. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the CSS. In the next video, we'll jump in and make this function with our JavaScript. Okay, so now we're going to get into the JavaScript, and basically we want to be able to double click on any area on the image and have the heart appear. We basically want to insert the heart icon into the DOM, and we already have the CSS for it to grow and have that effect. So let's start off by bringing in the Love Me class. So we'll use document.querySelector, and we're going to bring in the class of Love Me, and then we also want the times, which I believe has an ID of time. So that's going to be this 0 right here, because we want to change that when we double click. All right, now we'll take that Love Me class here, that Love Me variable, and we want to add an event listener, and I want to double click. Now there's an easy way to do this. We can pass in dbl click, and then when we double click, we're going to fire off a function, and let's just do a console log of 1, 2, 3. So we'll go over here and open up our console, make sure I save this, and if I double click, we see 1, 2, 3 gets logged. Now we're going to make this a little more complicated, and instead of just using double click, I want to use a single click, but create our own double click. And if you want to pause the video and try to do this yourself, basically we're just going to test the time between clicks, and if it's less than a certain amount, like let's say 800 milliseconds, then that's going to be considered a double click. If it's the time range is wider between clicks, then that's not going to be a double click. So if you want to try that yourself, you can, but I'm going to go ahead and just create a variable up here called click time. And down here, let's check to see if the click time is equal to 0. So if click time is equal to 0, then we're going to set the click time to new. We're going to use the date constructor and the get time method here. So we're going to set that, and then I'll just go ahead and console log click time so you can see what that gives us. So if I go over here and I just click once, I'm going to see the value of click time, which had the current time when I clicked. It's not going to work again because it's in this if statement. Click time is no longer equal to 0, so that's not going to work. All right, so we want to do that, and then else, so if it's not equal to 0, then we want to do another test here and check to see if let's put this in parentheses, another set of parentheses, and let's say if the new date dot get time, so we're just checking the current timestamp. So if that is, or if that minus the click time, I should say, if that is greater than 800 milliseconds, then for now let's just console log 123. Else, so if it's not less than 800, then we're going to just reset the click time to 0. I'm sorry, not 0, the current date time. So new date dot get time. Okay, so now if I go over here and I double click, I see 123. If I single click, nothing happens. If I single click and then I wait and single click, that's not considered a double click because that's greater than 800 milliseconds. So if I do it quick, that's less than 800 milliseconds, and that gives me my double click functionality. Okay, so I mean, you could use DBL click as an event, but just to make it a little more fun, we just added a click and then created our own double click event. All right, so when this happens, when we actually double click, what do we want to do? We're going to create, or call, I should say, a function called create heart. And we're going to pass the event parameter into that. And then, because we need to map where the mouse is in the image, because that's where we want the heart to appear, we also want to set the click time, we want to set that back to 0. Okay, so if I double click, it's going to tell me create heart is not a function, or it's not defined. So let's go ahead and define it. So down here, let's say function create heart. This is going to take in the event value here. Actually, we'll make this, let's make this an arrow function. So const create heart and set that to an arrow. So let's build a heart icon. So we'll create a variable called heart and set that to document.createElement. So create element does just that. We can create a div or any kind of HTML tag or HTML element. I'm going to use an I tag here, and I want to add a couple classes to it. So let's say heart.classList.add. So remember, with Font Awesome, we have the FAS class, and then I also want to add the FA-heart class. Okay, so now we have this heart element, but we want to insert this wherever we're clicking. Now, with this event that's passed in here, ultimately coming from here, from the click event here, we can get the position. So let's say const, and we'll call this X, so this is on the X axis. So on this event object, we have client X, and then let's call this Y, and let's do client Y. And then I just want to show you the values for this. So we're gonna, I can't type. We're gonna just console log X and Y. And now I'm gonna go over here and click somewhere, and I get 122, 133. If I go up in the corner here, I get 89, 89. If I go over here, So 377. So this first value is on the x-axis. I'm way over here, so the x value is 377. I'm pretty close to the top, so it's 92. Here it's 87. And this is just in the, in the viewport here. So if I go way over here and I click, you can see 85. All right, so it gives me the exact coordinates of where I'm clicking, which is what I want. Now, another value or two values that I want to get are the offset left and offset right values. So this E that is getting passed in here pertains to this element, right? The whole image. So we want to get the offset from the left and we want to get the offset from the right so that we can basically we can subtract that from whatever these XY values are, because we want it to show, within this image here that this is our working space, not the entire viewport. So we want to subtract this and this from wherever we're clicking. All right, and on that event parameter, on that E value, we can use offset left and offset top. So let's say const, and let's set left offset and set that to E, and this is actually on the target property. So E.target.offset, or I'm sorry, left offset, and then we want the top as well. So this one's going to be top offset and top offset. Okay, so now we want to basically take our X and Y values, which is in the place in the viewport that we click, and we want to subtract left and top from those. So let's say const X inside, so inside the image, and set that to X, but we want to minus the left offset. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with Y, and we're going to minus the top offset, because X is right and left, Y is up and down, so this is going to be Y inside. Okay, now we can get rid of this console log. Actually, let's console log just to see what we get for X inside and Y inside. So we'll save that, and now if I click way up in this corner, okay, so I'm getting not a number. Okay, so I screwed this up. This shouldn't be, it's not left offset, it's offset left. So offset left. I must have just did the autocomplete. So this is offset top. All right, so let's save that now, and let's go up into this corner, and now you'll see that these values are relative to the image rather than the viewport. Before it was like, what, 85 or something like that, but now, so that's 2, 1, and that's 1, 1. Okay, so that's the start of the corner here. So that gives us the correct coordinates within the image, not the viewport. So now that we have those values, what we'll do is take the heart that we created that element, and we want to set the style top property. Now in the CSS for the love me heart, remember we positioned that absolute, so we can use top, left, bottom, right CSS properties, but we don't want to set them here. We don't want to hard code them because it's dynamic. It's going to be wherever it's set here. So I'm going to set the top value, and I'm going to set that to, let's actually just put a template literal in here, and we want to set it to Y inside. Remember, this is the top, so we want the Y axis, which is to top and bottom, and then we just want to add px pixels, and then we want to do the same here. This will be X inside, and here we're going to set the left property. Okay, so we're going to insert it there. Now it's not going to show up just yet, so if I double click, it's not going to do anything because we need to add it to the love me element. We want to append child. Okay, so we're adding it in the love me element, the heart. All right, so if I go ahead and I click now, there we go. So we're inserting that heart wherever we click in the image. So even though this is a very, very simple project in terms of like functionality, if you didn't know that you can get the positioning of the mouse and stuff, and then how to get the exact position within an inner element, this can be very helpful for many other, larger projects. So we're not done yet. We want to do this times thing, and this is going to be pretty easy. We're just going to initialize another variable up here. We'll call this times clicked and set that to 0 by default. And we already brought the times element in, which is a span right here with the ID of times. So we'll say times.inner HTML and set that to times clicked, but that's going to be 0, so we would just want to increment it. And we can do that by just adding a plus plus at the beginning, and that will increment it by 1. So now if we go over here and I double click, you'll see you liked it 1 times, 2, 3, and obviously it doesn't matter, you know, where we click. Now one thing I want to show you is in the Elements tab. Let me see, just going to double click. So this is going to put in the I tag here with the, you know, FAS, FA heart, but look how many there are. So basically we keep putting them in, but they disappear because of this, because we're setting the opacity to 0, but they're all still there. So to fix this, we want to remove each heart after, let's say, 1 second. So we'll use a set timeout here, and this will just run a function after a certain amount of time. So the second argument we pass in is that amount of time, which I'm going to do 1 second, which is 1,000 milliseconds. And we don't even actually need curly braces because all we're doing is this heart dot remove. So we're just removing it from the DOM. So now if we take a look at down here, so love me right now is empty. I'm going to double click, and you can see it gets filled, and I can't even click it fast enough. Actually, you know what I'll do is just change this to 5 seconds. So I'll click, and you'll see the heart is in there. After 5 seconds, it removes. Okay, but I want to set that to 1 second. I just slowed it down to show you. So now it's not going to fill up with all these hearts. They get removed after 1 second. All right, so that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this project, and we'll move on to the next.